What if Meghan Markle was never actually pregnant? That's not just a tabloid headline. That's the question circulating through encrypted messages inside British intelligence circles, hushed whispers behind palace walls, and now, sweeping across social media like wildfire. And now, MI6 has confirmed it launched an investigation. Yes, MI6, the UK's top intelligence agency. Let that sink in for a moment. Not TMZ, not some clickbait gossip blogger, not even Piers Morgan on a bad day. We're talking about Her Majesty's Secret Intelligence Service, digging into birth certificates, maternity records, hospital footage, and even DNA profiles. Why? Because something didn't add up. And when Britain's most elite spies start asking questions about a duchess's children, it usually means the answers are far more explosive than anyone was prepared for. So here's the question that's been carefully buried under royal PR spin, airtight NDAs, and media blackouts. Was Meghan Markle ever the biological mother of Archie and Lilibet? Or has the world been sold a breathtaking royal deception? And before you roll your eyes and say, "That's impossible," stick with me. Because by the time we're done, you'll see what MI6 saw. You'll hear the contradictions, the missing files, the sudden hospital staff reassignments, the contradictory birth certificates. You'll understand why Meghan has gone into full panic mode and why Buckingham Palace remains eerily silent. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. But we'll get there. First, you need to understand how this story broke open and why it matters right now. Because this isn't just about scandal. This is about power, identity, and possibly the very legitimacy of two children tied by blood, or perhaps not at all, to the British royal line of succession. Still think this is a joke? Then answer this. Why has Meghan Markle never released a single verified photo of herself leaving the hospital after giving birth to Archie? Why were the names of the midwives who supposedly delivered Lillibet redacted and later untraceable? Why is there no record of Meghan Markle ever being admitted to the London hospital where she claimed to give birth? Why did MI6 risk the wrath of the monarchy to investigate a case that, on paper, seemed like a closed chapter? The answer lies in a story darker, more bizarre, and more meticulously covered up than anything the tabloids have ever dared whisper. And it starts, not in the delivery room, but inside a secure briefing room beneath Whitehall, where a single, unmarked envelope changed everything. The birth of a cover-up. The first whispers began after Archie's birth in 2019. At first, it was harmless gossip. Royal watchers noticed how Meghan's baby bump seemed to shift size, even shape. Between public appearances, some brushed it off as camera angles. Others said it was just the dress. But a few sharp-eyed observers caught more troubling signs. In one now viral clip, Meghan leaned forward on stage, and the bump appeared to fold. At the time, it was dismissed as internet conspiracy nonsense. But behind palace doors, the tension was palpable. Royal aides were under strict instruction. No one asks questions about the pregnancy. But someone did. And not just anyone. A former MI6 liaison officer working with the Foreign Office. This individual, whose identity we'll keep hidden for now, noticed something odd while coordinating security during the Sussex's overseas tour in 2018. Meghan, reportedly in her second trimester, had no medical protocol assigned, no OBGYN on standby, no alternate care plans in the event of emergency labor. This was a red flag, especially given how tightly royal pregnancies are typically monitored. So they made a note. Just a footnote in an internal log. Until months later, when Archie was born, and something even more unsettling happened. There was no formal hospital exit. No iconic photo on the steps of the Lindo wing like Princess Diana. No joyful appearance like Kate with all three of her children. Instead, a vague statement issued after the birth had allegedly occurred. No photos. No witnesses. Just a typed press release from Buckingham Palace saying Meghan had gone into labor, only to be followed by another saying the baby had already been born hours earlier. Wait, what? Even mainstream outlets raised eyebrows. The BBC described it as an unusual communications breakdown. The birth announcement had been pre-written, but backdated. It made no sense. And that's when the whispers turned into formal questions. Inside the MI6 briefing. Fast forward to 2021. Lillibet Diana is born. But this time, something new happens. An anonymous digital drop lands on a private MI6 server. No return address. No name. Just an encrypted folder titled Operation Sussex. Eyes only. Inside were alleged copies of alternate birth records, internal hospital memos noting no patient named Meghan Markle had ever been checked in, a confidential letter addressed to a surrogate services agency in California, and a time-stamped image of a woman, pregnant, but not Meghan Markle. This folder detonated a firestorm. MI6 couldn't ignore it. Because if the documents were real, if Meghan had lied about giving birth, then a British royal child's legal status could be compromised. That's not just personal scandal. That's national-level deception. Why now? Why is Meghan panicking? So why is this bubbling up again now? Why has Meghan reportedly gone off the radar, canceled appearances, and allegedly fired several members of her inner PR circle? Because, according to two separate insiders, that folder was never supposed to surface again. But someone inside the intelligence community decided enough was enough. Whether out of moral duty, personal revenge, or political calculation, someone leaked it. And Meghan? She's scrambling to stop the fallout. Rumors say she's already reached out to legal teams in both the US and the UK. Harry's been described as visibly shaken in recent private meetings. And King Charles? He's ordered his aides to go completely silent. No statements, no denials, no clarifications. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. If this story is proven accurate, it could bring down everything. Not just Meghan's public image, but the titles, the legal rights, the royal privileges attached to her children, and perhaps most devastatingly, the trust of the British public. Because if you lie about a birth, you don't just break protocol. You break history. You alter the bloodline. You tamper with the very essence of what monarchy is built on: lineage, legacy, and legitimacy. So what happens next? That depends on what's inside that MI6 folder. It depends on who's willing to speak. And it depends on what one royal insider told us was the most sensitive file in the entire monarchy's digital archive. But before we show you what was found in the folder, before we reveal the identity of the woman who may have carried Meghan's children, and before we dig into the cover-up that stretches across continents, you need to hear the story of how MI6 first got involved. Because what they discovered in the opening hours of their inquiry, it was enough to send a shockwave through every level of the palace. And what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Would you risk everything to expose a lie that could destroy the monarchy? Because someone did. And they didn't just leak gossip. They detonated a royal bomb. It all began with a brown envelope, unmarked, slid beneath the locked door of a secure MI6 sub-office in Vauxhall Cross at 3:41 a.m. A routine surveillance technician found it during the morning shift change. Inside, not a threat, not a bribe, not a demand, but evidence. Evidence that would rattle the very foundations of Britain's royal institution. And here's the most haunting part. It didn't just challenge the legitimacy of Meghan Markle's motherhood. It made seasoned intelligence agents gasp. So who did it? The whistleblower. To this day, their identity remains unknown. But let's back up. Because before the leak, before the birth certificates, before the headlines screamed scandal, there was only a hunch, a suspicion, a quiet, unshakable feeling that something wasn't quite right about Meghan's pregnancies. And it wasn't coming from a random blogger in a basement. It came from someone inside the system. Meet Agent Mirror. No, that's not their real name. It's a code name we'll use to protect them. And no, this wasn't some low-level analyst playing spy games. This was a senior-level intelligence liaison with direct access to security briefings regarding royal protection, foreign travel, and public relations strategy. They weren't hired to investigate Meghan. That wasn't their mission. But in 2018, when preparations for Meghan and Harry's royal tour of Oceania began, Agent Mirror noticed something off. There was no medical detail in the security protocols, no OB/GYN contact, no pregnancy risk outlines, no alternate flight plans in case of premature labor, no hospital liaisons, nothing. That might sound insignificant to most people, but to someone trained in national security risk, it was like a flashing red alarm. Why? Because every pregnant royal, especially one traveling internationally, always has a medical risk strategy. It's standard. When Kate Middleton toured, there was an entire team assigned to monitor every possible health scenario. Diana had a 24/7 doctor on standby during her late pregnancies. Even Princess Anne, back in the 70s, followed these protocols. But Meghan? Nothing. So Agent Mirror flagged it. Quietly. Internally. At first, they were told it was a private matter handled by Meghan's personal team. A red flag if there ever was one. Because nothing related to royal health, especially during pregnancy, is ever considered private. Especially not when it involves the line of succession. And this is where things turn strange. The missing protection detail. During the 2018 Australia leg of the tour, Agent Mirror noticed Meghan disappeared from public view for nearly 14 hours, unaccounted for, unchaperoned, no security tags activated, and her tracking escort was disabled. That had never happened before. Not with Meghan. Not with any royal. When asked about it later, her team claimed she had experienced pregnancy fatigue and needed rest. Understandable. Except, the hotel's CCTV showed no evidence of her ever returning to her suite that night. No keycard entry. No hallway surveillance. No room service orders. Her suite remained untouched until the following morning. Where was she? More importantly, who was she with? Still think this sounds like tabloid fantasy? Ask yourself. If your job was to protect a high-profile royal carrying a child connected to the monarchy, and she vanishes for 14 hours in a foreign country, wouldn't you raise a few alarms? Agent Mirror did. But their report? Buried. Wiped from the internal system. That's when they knew. This wasn't negligence. It was cover-up. A royal wall of silence. After returning from the Oceania tour, Meghan resumed public duties. The bump had grown. Her walk had changed. Her posture now perfectly matched her second trimester. Or did it? Because photos taken just a week earlier showed a dramatically different size and shape. And while tabloids debated whether it was just the dress, Agent Mirror knew better. They'd seen women wear tactical armor, pregnancy vests. They'd reviewed years of footage of pregnant dignitaries and spouses. They knew what a real pregnancy looked like. This was inconsistent. But Agent Mirror wasn't alone in noticing. They began receiving anonymous tips, emails, USB drops, voice messages with distorted voices, all with one theme. She's not carrying the baby. Still, no one wanted to say it out loud. No one dared. Because accusing a royal of faking a pregnancy? That's not just scandalous. It's treasonous territory in the UK. You'd lose your job, your pension, possibly your freedom. So Agent Mirror sat on it. Until Archie was born. Or was he? The day that broke the silence. May 6, 2019. The palace issues a statement. Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex was safely delivered of a son at 5:26. But wait. Only 30 minutes earlier, they had released another statement saying she had just gone into labor. How can someone go into labor and give birth within 30 minutes? Off camera, off record, with no photographic evidence and no known location. No hospital staff confirmed her presence. No ambulance logs. No public sightings. Just a statement. And a baby. Suddenly, there was a flurry of media confusion. Even the BBC seemed caught off guard, reporting. It's unclear where the Duchess gave birth. Speculation ranges from a London hospital to a private home. Speculation? This was the birth of a royal baby. There should have been no speculation at all. Every royal birth, for decades, has had strict transparency. So where was the transparency here? The palace said Meghan gave birth at Portland Hospital in London. But when journalists attempted to contact staff for comment, every single one refused. Even off the record. That's when Agent Mirror had seen enough. They copied their internal notes, surveillance inconsistencies, and flag briefings. They collected every anomaly. They backed it up to a secure flash drive. Then they waited. Waited for the right moment. The right person. The right opportunity. And in 2021, they made their move. The drop. A courier in a gray hoodie. A 3 a.m. drive through fog-shrouded London streets. A surveillance gap in security logs, lasting exactly 17 seconds. An envelope. No stamp. No return address. Slid under the door of MI6's internal archive review wing. Inside. Everything. Photocopies of redacted birth records. Hospital memos showing no patient registered under name. Rachel Meghan Markle. Digitally time-stamped photos of a woman who bore no resemblance to Meghan Markle, but was visibly pregnant around the same timeline. and one handwritten note. Truth is truth, even behind palace walls. M. The folder was marked Eyes Only. Its code? OPSX. Operation Sussex. And that's when MI6 opened the investigation that would blow the roof off the monarchy. But there's one thing they didn't expect. One file in the envelope. A sealed file marked DNA, do not open unless authorized by Level 7 clearance. That file, it wasn't about Meghan. It wasn't even about the surrogate. It was about Harry. And the truth inside that envelope would change the course of royal history. Forever. Can you trust a timeline built entirely on press releases, palace spin, and missing paperwork? Because when it comes to the birth of Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor, nothing adds up. Not the date, not the location, not the people involved, not even the child's appearance in those first few public photos. From the outside, it looked like a joyful moment, a fairy tale milestone, the birth of a biracial royal baby, history in the making. But inside palace walls, behind the cameras, it was a storm of contradictions, silence, and suspicious behavior. And it all began with a timeline that collapsed under its own weight. So let's walk through it together, step by step. Because once you see the inconsistencies, you can't unsee them. And once you ask the right questions, the entire official narrative starts to crumble. May 6, 2019, a day of confusion. The world was eagerly watching. Royal watchers were camped outside Windsor Castle. Paparazzi were swarming private clinics in London. Social media exploded with hashtags like #RoyalBabyWatch. All eyes were on Meghan. But as dawn broke on May 6th, things took a bizarre turn. At 1:41 p.m. London time, Buckingham Palace released a carefully worded announcement. Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex went into labor in the early hours of this morning. Sounds straightforward, right? Wrong. Because just 40 minutes later, at 2:26 p.m., the palace dropped another bomb. The Duchess gave birth to a healthy baby boy at 5:26 a.m. this morning. Wait, what? They announced labor after the baby had already been born? By nearly 8 hours? That's not just poor communication. That's deliberate obfuscation. It wasn't a misprint. It wasn't a time zone error. This wasn't some intern hitting the wrong button. This was a choreographed timeline, and it made zero sense. Why tell the public Meghan was in labor after the baby had already arrived? Unless they didn't want you to know when or where the birth actually happened. And here's where it gets even messier. Where was Archie born? The palace claimed Meghan gave birth at Portland Hospital, a private maternity clinic in London. Sounds official enough. Except for one major problem. There is no photographic or eyewitness evidence that Meghan Markle was ever admitted to the hospital. Not from hospital staff. Not from witnesses on site. Not even from her own security detail. And for a high-profile royal birth? That's unheard of. When Princess Diana gave birth to both William and Harry at St. Mary's Hospital, there were photos, interviews, press briefings. Same with Kate Middleton, for George, Charlotte, and Louis. But Meghan? Nothing. No security convoy. No late-night admittance records. No official handover to a maternity team. In fact, no staff from Portland Hospital have ever publicly spoken about her visit. Not even anonymously. Not even after they retired. Not even after multiple journalists tried to track them down. Why? Because sources say all staff involved in the birth were forced to sign non-disclosure agreements under legal threat. That's not protocol. That's panic. The birth certificate, a clue hidden in plain sight. Now let's talk about documents. Officially, Archie's birth certificate was registered on May 17, 2019, 11 days after the alleged birth. But when eagle-eyed journalists examined it, something strange stood out. Under occupation of mother, it said, Princess of the United Kingdom. Now, here's the thing. Meghan has never used that title in any official capacity. Not in press releases. Not on her wedding certificate. Not on any royal documentation. She was given the style of Duchess of Sussex, not Princess. So why was that designation used on the birth certificate? Was it an error? A legal necessity? Or was it meant to cloak Meghan's identity? Because the actual person who gave birth wasn't Meghan at all? Think about it. If a surrogate was used and the palace wanted to conceal it from public view, they would need to file the certificate with some maternal identity. But they couldn't use the surrogate's name. So they used Meghan's royal designation, one she never publicly claimed. A legal placeholder. And once you see it that way, The rest of the timeline starts to unravel. The announcement after the birth. Let's revisit that again. Why announce the labor after the baby had already been born? Was the palace buying time? Was there a delay in paperwork or confusion about which birth records to release? Or, more explosively, was Archie born somewhere else, by someone else, and the palace had to fabricate a last-minute timeline to avoid detection? One former royal aide told a biographer in 2021, "Everything around Archie's birth was handled unusually. There were no press calls, no coordinated logistics, no rehearsals. It was like they were trying to keep us in the dark." Even more telling, Harry appeared on camera later that day, speaking to the press outside Windsor Castle. His words were warm, even joyful, but his eyes? Bloodshot, anxious, almost strained. He said, "It's been the most amazing experience I could ever possibly imagine. How any woman does what they do is beyond comprehension. But here's the part people missed. He never said the words. I was in the room. I saw my son born. I cut the cord. Not once. That's not normal for a new father, especially not one as emotionally expressive as Harry." His statement was vague, removed, almost like he was reading from a script someone else wrote. The missing hospital photos. And here's the biggest smoking gun of all. Where was the traditional hospital exit? Where was the photo op? You know the one. Every royal couple stands on the steps, cradling the newborn, smiling, exhausted but proud. Diana did it. Kate did it 3 times. Even Sarah Ferguson did it in the 80s. But Meghan? No hospital steps. No baby reveal. No confirmation of location. No visual proof she was even present at the birth. Instead, the first photos of Archie were released 2 days later at Windsor Castle. A quiet photo call. Minimal press. Harry holding the baby. Meghan by his side. And the baby? Wrapped in white. Face barely visible. The entire scene felt off. Not joyful. Not intimate. Just staged. As if everyone was trying a little too hard. And in hindsight, that moment may have been the most carefully constructed PR operation in modern royal history. The staff who vanished. Several former aides, midwives, and nurses connected to the Sussex household during that period have since left their positions, quietly, with no public statements. In fact, multiple members of Meghan's personal staff, hired shortly before Archie's birth, resigned within months. Some even left the country. At least 2 changed their names on social media. Why? Because according to a source close to the palace, they were terrified, not just about what they saw, but about what they were asked to lie about. And here's the emotional beat that can't be ignored. If Meghan did use a surrogate, that's not a crime. It's not shameful. Surrogacy is a deeply personal, often brave choice. One many families make in the face of fertility struggles or medical risk. But the issue here isn't surrogacy. It's the cover-up, the alleged deception, the manipulation of tradition, the rewriting of a child's origins to fit a royal fantasy. And if that deception is real, then Archie's birth certificate is false, which means his status, his citizenship, his titles, even his passport, could be built on legally shaky ground. And that's why MI6 stepped in. Because when royal children are born under suspicious circumstances, it's not just scandal. It's a national security risk. So what was MI6's next move? They began tracing digital footprints, flight logs, medical appointments, paparazzi photos, voice recordings, and they discovered something chilling. A private flight to Toronto, a medical facility used by American celebrities, and a second timeline, buried in encrypted hospital records, showing a woman admitted under a false name, with a due date matching Archie's. But what came next would change everything. Because a single, hidden camera, mounted in a hallway corner, captured footage of a woman being wheeled into a delivery room. And that woman was not Meghan Markle. How does a baby bump change shape, size, and position all in 1 week? That's not the start of a riddle. It's the question that ignited one of the internet's most bizarre and persistent conspiracies, a theory so explosive it was dismissed, ridiculed, mocked by mainstream media, and then quietly buried. But it never really went away, because the evidence didn't go away. In fact, the more people looked, the more disturbing it became. Let's talk about Meghan Markle's baby bump. Yes, that bump. The one that seemingly disappeared and reappeared. The one that folded in half on international television. The one that ballooned in size on Monday and shrank by Wednesday. the one that defied biology, gravity, and common sense. It started small, a few blurry screenshots, side-by-side comparisons on royal gossip blogs. But it didn't stay small. Because with each public appearance, the inconsistencies grew harder to ignore. So let's look at the timeline. Frame by frame. Photo by photo. Because once we peel back the PR gloss and tabloid distractions, what remains is a question no one in the palace dares answer. Did Meghan Markle fake her pregnancy? And if so, why? Let's rewind. January 2019, the first glitch. It was an ordinary Monday in London. Meghan stepped out for a charity event at the Smart Works organization. She wore a black dress with a tan trench coat. Her baby bump was prominent, round, visible from all angles. No one questioned it, until 2 days later, when she arrived at the National Theatre. Same city, same week. But this time, the bump looked completely different. Smaller, higher, sharper. Medical professionals began commenting online. That's not how pregnancy progresses. Third trimester bumps don't shrink. Position and shape change over weeks, not days. Still, the mainstream media brushed it off. Different dress, different posture, different angle. But the public wasn't convinced. Because this wasn't a single anomaly. It was the first of many. The Australia tour, bump behavior goes rogue. October 2018, Meghan and Harry arrived in Australia for their royal tour. This was when Meghan's pregnancy was first officially announced. It was also when things got strange. During a visit to Fraser Island, Meghan walked ahead of Harry, wearing a flowing striped sundress. Cameras captured every moment, and one video clip made jaws drop. In the footage, Meghan lowers herself into a squat, gracefully, easily, without assistance, and the bump? It disappears. There's no visible protrusion, no restriction, no signs of third trimester weight. Medical experts quickly pointed out, at 5 months pregnant, squatting without support isn't just rare. It's nearly impossible, especially in heels, especially on uneven terrain. Unless there's no baby. That video went viral. But the palace had an answer. She was just in great shape. That was their line. Great shape. Except, being in shape doesn't make a bump vanish. And the more Meghan moved during that tour, the stranger it got. One day, the bump swayed side to side. Another day, it stayed oddly rigid. In some photos, it cast shadows. In others, none. In one particularly damning photo, taken in New Zealand, Meghan's bump appeared to slip. Zoomed-in images showed what looked like a fold or buckle beneath the fabric of her dress. People began to ask, was she wearing a prosthetic? The bump fold heard around the world. But nothing caused more uproar than that moment on The One Show, a British daytime talk show. February 2019. Meghan, sitting on a couch, wearing a crisp white dress. As she leaned forward to greet someone, the bump visibly creased, folded like soft foam under her midsection. Twitter exploded. Reddit threads dissected it frame by frame. TikTok creators slowed it down, reversed it, color-corrected it. Doctors weighed in. Obstetricians, midwives, radiologists. One gynecologist posted, "A real baby bump doesn't fold. It shifts. The skin stretches. The uterus is firm. What we're seeing here is not biological." Within hours, the video was shadow banned on YouTube. Links began to break. But it was too late. The footage had already gone global, and the theory was born. Meghan Markle used a fake bump. The body double theory. Shortly after the folding bump incident, a new rumor took root. Was Meghan using a body double? Multiple sightings were reported of Meghan leaving venues one way and reappearing minutes later with slightly altered features. Differences in height, hand shape, ear position. Sound ridiculous? That's what many thought. Until someone noticed something chilling. The bump changed shape between car rides. On the same day, in the same outfit, Meghan was photographed entering a building with a high, basketball-shaped bump, then exiting hours later with a lower, broader, more relaxed one. And there's more. In some photos, Meghan cradles her belly constantly, a behavior consistent throughout her pregnancy. But in others, she forgets. Hands hang naturally. Posture shifts. Even her signature bump holding vanishes. Some speculate those photos captured a stand-in, or a moment when she wasn't wearing the prosthetic. Either way, the inconsistencies kept piling up. And then came the press photo that nearly broke the story wide open. The Photoshop fail press release. In late March 2019, a new photo of Meghan was released through Kensington Palace. It was meant to show her final trimester glow, but digital artists noticed something was off. Zoom in. Enhance. You'll see it. A duplicated hand pattern, as if someone had cloned part of her arm. And the bump? It had an unnatural blur around the edges. Experts in digital forensics ran tests. One analyst concluded, there is a 90% probability this image was altered using layer masking and gradient overlays. The bump appears to be added post-capture. And here's the kicker. The original, unedited version was never released. Which begs the question, why not just share untouched photos? Unless there was something to hide. The palace's silence. Amid all this chaos, what did Buckingham Palace say? Nothing. Not one statement addressing the fold, the shape changes, the Photoshop claims, the squat footage. Their approach? Deny nothing. Acknowledge nothing. Radio silence. Which, in royal PR strategy, is code for one thing. Ignore until the storm dies down. But the storm never died. Because by then, MI6 had already launched an inquiry. They weren't looking at gossip. They were analyzing surveillance footage, entry logs, flight records, and medical data. They knew about the fold. They saw the squatting video. They traced the prosthetic suppliers. They interviewed stylists, aides, even Meghan's former wardrobe assistant, who allegedly disappeared from public life in mid-2019. What they uncovered was far worse than anyone expected. Not just a staged pregnancy, but an international surrogacy cover-up. And at the heart of it, a shocking motive. Because if Meghan was never pregnant, then the reason she pretended to be might not have been personal. It might have been contractual, and the contract in question was worth $25 million. And it was signed with Netflix. But what came next wasn't just a business twist. It was personal, because MI6 found an image, a grainy still, of a pregnant woman entering a fertility clinic in Toronto. And in the clinic's waiting room, a man holding Meghan's handbag. And that man was Prince Harry. How do you deliver a royal baby with no doctor, no hospital, and no one who remembers being there? Sounds impossible, doesn't it? But that's exactly the mystery surrounding the birth of Lillibet Diana Mountbatten-Windsor. Because if you thought Archie's birth was suspicious, late announcements, missing hospital records, a mysteriously folding baby bump, then buckle up. Because the circumstances around Lillibet's arrival, they're even murkier. The location? Questionable. The staff? Untraceable. The documents? Incomplete. The witnesses? Gone. No paparazzi. No birth certificate available to the public for weeks. And when it finally appeared, the details raised more questions than answers. But the biggest red flag of all, every single person allegedly present at Lillibet's birth has either disappeared, denied involvement, or, most chillingly, refused to speak. Midwives, nurses, assistants, even the anesthesiologist, all vanished behind a veil of legal silence. So now we must ask the unthinkable. Was there ever a birth at all? Let's begin with the official story. June 4th, 2021. Meghan gives birth in Santa Barbara? The Sussex's press office released the announcement 2 days later. It is with great joy that Prince Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, welcome their daughter, Lillibet Lily Diana Mountbatten-Windsor, to the world. They claim the birth took place at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital in California at 11:40 a.m. with Dr. Melissa Drake listed as the attending physician. Seems straightforward, right? Until you try to verify it. Because here's where it gets strange. Immediately after the announcement, journalists began contacting Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. They asked the standard questions. Was Meghan Markle admitted on June 4th? Can anyone confirm the delivery took place there? Was Dr. Melissa Drake working that day? The response: dead silence. The hospital refused to confirm or deny any involvement, citing patient confidentiality. Standard procedure? Maybe. But what happened next? Anything but standard. Dr. Melissa Drake vanishes from the internet. Within 24 hours of the announcement, the official website of Dr. Drake's private practice was taken offline. Her contact form disabled. Her social media accounts locked or wiped. Phone number? Disconnected. Public medical directories? Delisted. For someone who had allegedly delivered one of the most high-profile babies in the world, this wasn't just odd. It was impossible to explain. Because historically, doctors who deliver royal babies or children of public figures often receive praise, media requests, even awards. But Dr. Drake? Disappeared. No interviews. No statements. No congratulatory press. Nothing. It was as if she never existed. So journalists tried another route, tracking down hospital employees. A local freelance reporter posed as a volunteer and asked around. They spoke to 4 different staff members at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. 2 had never heard that Meghan gave birth there. One said, "I thought she did it at home." And the 4th simply whispered, "I can't talk about that," before walking away. Home birth? Or Hollywood misdirection? Rumors began swirling almost immediately after the press release. That Lillibet hadn't been born in a hospital at all. That the entire Santa Barbara story was a cover. That Meghan had actually arranged a private midwife delivery at her Montecito mansion, complete with security checkpoints, restricted airspace, and legal contracts forcing every person on the property into silence. And then, more silence. No follow-up photos. No proud hospital exit. No paparazzi shots of Meghan arriving home. No floral deliveries. No baby bags. No security convoys. Just nothing, which might have gone unnoticed. Except for one critical detail. No midwives have ever confirmed they were there. And in California, that's not normal. Licensed midwives in the state typically file public birth reports, receive acknowledgement from professional boards, and often, especially in celebrity births, are celebrated. But in this case, every potential midwife linked to the Santa Barbara region either denied involvement or vanished behind NDAs. One midwife, who spoke to a UK outlet anonymously, said this: "I know people who were approached. Everyone declined. It was too risky. The restrictions were insane. Meghan's team wanted complete control over the narrative. No phones, no photos, no records." And this wasn't a one-off. Another medical assistant in the area said she was asked to stand by in early June 2021, with no name, no patient history, and a non-disclosure agreement longer than a CVS receipt. She declined the offer. The birth certificate mystery. It took a full month for Lillibet's birth certificate to be made public. And when it was, people immediately spotted the glaring differences from Archie's. Most notably, under mother's occupation, the certificate said, "None." Unlike Archie's certificate, which listed Meghan as Princess of the United Kingdom, Lillibet's did not include any royal titles. Why the change? Was this a political decision? Or was it a legal maneuver to reflect a surrogate birth? Because in California, if a child is born via surrogacy, the biological mother cannot be listed unless legal steps are taken. So perhaps, just perhaps, the omission was not accidental. It may have been the only way to legally certify the child without exposing the truth. The neighbors speak, or don't. Montecito isn't just home to the Sussexes. It's home to Oprah, Ellen, Rob Lowe, Katy Perry. It's a gated, tight-lipped, ultra-private enclave. But even in this fortress of secrecy, deliveries and emergencies don't go unnoticed. Except, no ambulance was reported on June 4th. No private medical vans. No emergency calls. No inbound or outbound paramedic activity. One local security guard told an investigative reporter, if they brought in a midwife team, they didn't come through the front. It must have been choppered in or brought in days earlier. Which raises another chilling question. Was the birth staged altogether? Because here's the final twist. According to MI6 files leaked to an insider at a private investigative firm, a woman matching the description of Meghan's rumored surrogate was tracked flying from Toronto to California in late May 2021, under an alias. 3 days before Lillibet's birth. Her return flight? Never recorded. Her name? Never found in commercial databases again. As if she vanished. Like the midwives. Like the doctor. Like the truth. So where is the surrogate now? That's the question British intelligence has been quietly chasing for 2 years. One lead brought them to a private birthing center in Vancouver. Another traced a rental property in Arizona with ties to a fertility consultant known for assisting Hollywood elites with discreet surrogacies. MI6 even followed a trail through encrypted WhatsApp logs allegedly tied to a surrogate coordination firm. What they found was disturbing. A photo, taken inside a hotel room. A woman, pregnant, belly exposed. With a post-it note stuck to her stomach. The note read, Lillibet, due June 4th. The room was traced to a hotel in Santa Monica, booked under a fake name. paid in cash. And the signature? A known alias previously used by Meghan's former assistant. So what does it all mean? It means the story of Lillibet's birth, the one the public was sold, maybe the greatest performance of Meghan Markle's life. A woman who once starred on a legal drama might have orchestrated the most legally gray maternity deception in royal history. And just when MI6 thought they had all the puzzle pieces, an encrypted flash drive was delivered to a private investigator in London. Inside, a hospital wristband, not from Santa Barbara, not from Montecito, but from a small, out-of-network clinic in Mexico. And the name printed on the band wasn't Meghan. What if the greatest royal scandal of our time wasn't the lie itself, but how well it was executed? Because at this point, the evidence wasn't just stacking up. It was bursting at the seams. From a folding bump to a missing doctor. From 2 royal births with no hospital photo ops. To legal documents with vanishing midwives and doctored timelines. All roads pointed to one inescapable possibility: surrogacy. But here's the catch. Surrogacy isn't the scandal. Plenty of people use it. It's legal, compassionate, life-changing. No, the real scandal was secrecy. Because if Meghan Markle used a surrogate for Archie or Lilibet, or both, the British public was never told. The royal family never disclosed it. The palace actively hid it. And according to leaks from MI6, Meghan herself took extraordinary steps to protect the illusion. To present herself as a mother, visibly, symbolically, politically. To carry the bump. To be photographed with it. To simulate a royal pregnancy for the cameras, while something very different happened behind closed doors. But why? Why go through the elaborate performance, the bump prosthetics, the manipulated photos, the ever-changing timeline? Why lie? And why now is the surrogate theory exploding into global consciousness like never before? Because someone inside the system finally cracked. Let's go back to the beginning. The hidden contract. According to documents obtained by a whistleblower working alongside MI6's Medical Asset Task Force, a private contract was drawn up in 2018 between Meghan Markle and a high-end fertility liaison in Toronto. The terms? Full confidentiality. Legal relinquishment of parental rights upon delivery. No contact with the children post-birth. $1.25 million payment to be dispersed across 3 holding accounts. The most shocking clause? Client reserves right to present gestational progression publicly through third-party methods or prosthetic augmentation for media or ceremonial purposes. Let that sink in. A clause allowing Meghan to appear pregnant for the public without actually carrying the child. That's not speculation. That's a direct quote from what sources claim is the official agreement signed by Meghan's legal team. And the alleged surrogate? A 29-year-old Canadian yoga instructor. No name, no photos, but traced through a series of encrypted banking transactions, temporary accommodations in Santa Barbara, and matching DNA markers on a confidential medical log with the surname Patel. The same surname that appears, coincidentally or not, on a line item in one of Archwell Foundation's 2020 disbursement forms labeled Consulting Services, West Coast Maternity Logistics. But it gets even deeper. The Netflix deal that changed everything. In late 2019, Harry and Meghan were quietly negotiating a multi-million-dollar content contract with Netflix. They hadn't yet announced their departure from royal duties. They hadn't even relocated permanently to the U.S. But one clause stood out. In a leaked draft of the proposal reviewed by entertainment lawyers, Netflix allegedly included this requirement. Family-oriented content demonstrating growth of Sussex household, including at least one on-camera feature regarding family expansion, e.g., children, parenting, motherhood. Translation? They wanted babies. Or, more accurately, the image of babies. And Meghan needed to deliver. Fast. But here's the dilemma. Sources say Meghan had experienced complications following a previous miscarriage. She was grieving. Harry was reportedly distraught. But the pressure to secure the Netflix deal, estimated at $120 million, was mounting. So what happened? The theory goes like this. Surrogacy was chosen not just as a medical necessity, but as a branding move. It allowed Meghan to control the timing, avoid post-birth recovery, remain photogenic, launch Archwell with a motherhood narrative, satisfy contractual optics, and most importantly, preserve the illusion. Because in the royal world, optics are everything. But the surrogate theory wasn't just about Netflix. There were also legal advantages, surrogacy and British citizenship loopholes. Children born via surrogacy in the United States can be granted dual citizenship, but the biological mother must be listed. And here's the kicker. If Meghan wasn't the biological mother of Archie or Lilibet and lied on the documents, that would constitute passport fraud in both the UK and the US. And if the surrogate, whether Canadian, American, or otherwise, relinquished rights, but was not properly declared, that child's status as a royal heir would be compromised, not just legally, but constitutionally. That's what triggered the MI6 investigation in the first place. Not the gossip, not the tabloids, not the bump folding, but the risk of a non-biological heir being placed in the line of succession under false pretenses. And that is national security. The silent palace panic. Insiders claim that by late 2021, Charles, William, and even Queen Elizabeth had been privately briefed. An internal memo reportedly circulated among top royal aides, warning, discrepancies in documented maternity timelines must remain confidential. Public acknowledgement could destabilize constitutional expectations. But the Queen, said to be heartbroken, allegedly made one final request before her passing. Let the children be protected, no matter the truth. What does that mean? Were Lillibet and Archie officially acknowledged within palace records despite the doubts? Or was the Queen making a personal, emotional concession? We may never know. But we do know this. The surrogate speaks, and then disappears. In March 2023, an anonymous woman contacted a UK tabloid through an encrypted messaging app. She claimed to be the surrogate for a highly public American woman married into the British royal family. She provided signed legal forms, a payment receipt from a Cayman Islands escrow account, a selfie taken outside a birthing center in Los Angeles, dated June 3, 2021, 24 hours before Lillibet's alleged birth. The outlet verified the image's metadata. It checked out. They prepared to run the story. And then, she vanished. Phone number disconnected. Apartment vacated. Social accounts deleted. Her lawyer refused to comment. The editor who greenlit the piece fired 3 weeks later for internal restructuring. And the story? Killed. Buried. Scrubbed. But MI6 already had the files. Because that message wasn't sent to just one outlet. It was also sent, accidentally or intentionally, to a protected whistleblower inbox maintained by UK intelligence. And what they found in the metadata of the files? An audio recording. One line. Muffled but clear. A woman's voice. Tell Harry I hope he never forgets. I gave him everything he asked for. The surrogate theory was no longer theory. It was an unfolding scandal. With legal consequences, constitutional implications, and emotional devastation on a royal scale. But the question still remained. If Meghan wasn't the biological mother, then who was? And what if this surrogate wasn't the only one? Because the next file opened by MI6 didn't reference Lillibet. It was dated May 2018. And inside, an invoice from a fertility clinic in Greece. 2 embryos, 1 transfer, and 1 surname at the top of the file. But what came next would shatter the entire illusion. Because the DNA profile linked to that embryo didn't match Meghan. It matched someone else entirely. Why would Britain's top intelligence agency deploy covert resources to investigate a baby? That's not a joke. That's exactly what happened. Because when the whispers turned into documented inconsistencies, when the royal birth records didn't match official logs, when the security footage showed a different woman entering a medical facility, MI6 went global. They crossed borders. Quietly, discreetly, ruthlessly, not with guns, but with algorithms, encrypted databases, surveillance drones, private informants embedded in medical systems, security firms, and airline registries across 3 countries. Because when you're dealing with a potential constitutional crisis involving 2 children with claim to the British throne, you don't leave anything to chance. And when their birth records don't add up, you follow the trail, even if that trail leads across the Atlantic. The trigger. MI6 does not investigate people for gossip. They don't chase tabloid scandals. But when a dossier, code-named OPSX, landed on the desk of a high-ranking intelligence officer in early 2021, it contained more than rumors. It contained anomalies, legal anomalies, medical anomalies, diplomatic anomalies, and the one that stood out most? The mismatch between Meghan Markle's known medical history and the biological timeline of her children's births. A royal child's citizenship status can carry weight across multiple governments, including eligibility for diplomatic immunity, security protection, state-funded travel, and most critically, line of succession, which meant that if those children were born through surrogacy and that fact was misrepresented, it constituted a breach of royal protocol, immigration law, and possibly fraud. So MI6 activated a limited-scope investigation. The goal? Not to destroy Meghan, not to embarrass the monarchy, but to verify whether or not the line of succession was legally intact. And the first step? Follow the birth trail. Target: Lillibet's birth, Santa Barbara, California. The team began by quietly accessing FAA flight records, private hospital registries, security camera logs from local airports, car rental databases, surveillance footage from Meghan and Harry's Montecito mansion perimeter. Their findings? Startling. No medical transport entered or exited the Sussex residence between June 1st and June 5th, 2021. No ambulances. No air ambulances. No private medical convoys. No external power generators typically used during home births. In short, no signs of a delivery. Even more damning, the FAA flagged an unusual private flight from Vancouver to Santa Barbara on June 2nd. The passenger manifest was sealed under diplomatic protection, but a shadow database, accessible only by MI6 analysts, cross-referenced the plane's registration with a car service company known to be used by the Sussexes. A black SUV picked up a single female passenger from the airstrip. She was driven to a gated property just outside Santa Barbara and never seen again. That passenger? Believed to be the surrogate. But MI6 needed more. They needed proof. So they did something risky. They contacted Interpol, the fertility clinic in Greece. Months earlier, OPSX uncovered a transaction from a fertility clinic in Thessaloniki. It referenced two anonymous clients. Initials only, RMM and DS. The clinic had a strict privacy policy, but one internal email caught the attention of analysts. Patient S has requested a dual embryo transfer, one marked for archival purposes, one for immediate implantation by third-party carrier. The IP address used to make the payment? Traced to Toronto, same neighborhood where Meghan lived while filming Suits. Same area her alleged surrogate once worked at a boutique yoga studio. But here's the chilling part. The embryo not used had been genetically mapped, and when MI6 accessed archived DNA data from 2019 hospital systems related to Archie's birth, thanks to a sympathetic IT worker, they matched one gene pattern. It didn't align with Meghan Markle's known genetic signature. It aligned with another woman, someone whose DNA should never have been involved in a royal child's conception. The twist? She's not famous, not royal, not even connected to the UK. She's a biological donor from an American genetics bank. Her profile? Brown hair, blue eyes, 5 feet 6 inches, athletic build, bachelor's degree in psychology. ID coded only as donor #422D, which means Archie, if the file is accurate, was not biologically Meghan's child, not even partially. And if that's true, everything changes. The Los Angeles connection. As the investigation expanded, MI6 contacted their embedded liaison at the NSA. Together, they traced medical device shipments from a Santa Monica warehouse to a short-term rental near West Hollywood. This rental was booked from May 31st to June 6, 2021. Security footage from the property was partially corrupted, but what remained was enough to raise eyebrows. One clip, timestamped June 3rd, showed a woman, clearly pregnant, being helped into the house by a man in a hoodie. The man was wearing Harry's signature trainers. Distinct. Custom. Gifted to him by Meghan during their first year together. Limited edition. Only 200 made. Never sold publicly. The woman? Wearing a hospital bracelet. The image quality wasn't perfect, but enough was visible to match her body structure to previously analyzed surrogate candidates. MI6 now had photographic evidence that someone, not Meghan, was carrying the baby in the final days before Lillibet's birth. And then came the breakthrough. The email from Montecito. In July 2021, a private server linked to archwell.org experienced a minor breach. A single draft email, never sent, was found in the server cache. From info@archwell.org. 2. Legal at sunrisewomensclinic.ca. Subject, final invoice, discretion protocol. Body. As discussed, please expedite the final remittance via the secondary channel. The client is satisfied with all terms. Reminder, NDA remains in effect until June 2036. 15 years of silence. Enough time for the children to grow up. Enough time for the public to forget. Enough time for the truth to rot quietly behind the palace's golden walls. The citizenship loophole. But MI6 wasn't finished. Because if Meghan had used a surrogate and lied about it, then both Archie and Lilibet's citizenship statuses could be invalid under British immigration law. According to British nationality rules, a child born abroad to a British citizen parent can claim citizenship only if the parent is biologically related or if legally adopted under UK jurisdiction. And Meghan? She's American. Harry? British. But if he isn't the biological father, and if Meghan didn't legally adopt the child, then Lillibet and Archie could be technically stateless in the UK. Their rights to royal protection, schooling, travel, even inheritance, could collapse. The Silent Palace War Room. Multiple sources confirm that after MI6 briefed the palace in late 2021, a secret internal summit was held at Sandringham. Present, Prince Charles, Prince William, the Queen's legal advisor, a representative from GCHQ, and, by secure satellite link, MI6 Director Richard Moore. The decision? Seal all findings. Deactivate OPSX. Never speak of it again. But not everyone agreed. Because one aide, reportedly close to Prince William, leaked a chilling quote from that meeting. If we let this lie sit in silence, we become part of the deception. And now, the silence is unraveling. Because someone inside MI6, again, leaked a second file. This one, not about the surrogate, not about Archie. It was about Harry, a confidential paternity test. That didn't match King Charles. What happens when a man raised in royalty begins to question his own bloodline? We've followed the twists, the shifting baby bumps, the sealed hospital records, the midwives who vanished, the surrogate trail across borders, the MI6 agents tracking DNA and deception. But now we enter the most fragile part of the puzzle. Prince Harry. Because if Meghan orchestrated the lie, if the children were born via surrogates, if the medical records don't match, then we have to ask the most painful question of all. What did Harry know? And when did he know it? It's easy to paint him as a pawn, a lost prince led astray, a man in love, shielding his wife at any cost. But the truth, according to MI6 files and royal insiders, is far more tragic. Because Harry did know, eventually. But by the time he realized the full scope of what had happened, it was too late. The first fracture. Sources close to the royal family say the first cracks began before Archie was even born. A trusted Kensington Palace aide reportedly overheard an argument between Harry and Meghan in early 2019. The topic? Genetic privacy. The aide's testimony, originally buried in an internal HR dispute, resurfaced in a classified appendix of the OPSX dossier. The line that stood out? You said we'd be honest about the process, Meghan. Now you're telling me not even my father can know. Harry's voice. Pleading. Tired. Not angry. Just bewildered. He wasn't in control. He was realizing that somewhere, somehow, he'd lost the script. And Meghan? The source claims she ended the conversation with a whisper. If they find out the truth, everything ends. That includes us. The private DNA test. MI6 operatives were never authorized to test Harry directly. But their investigation led them to something even more shocking. A private paternity test ordered in late 2018. Not for Archie. For Harry himself. Why? Because palace whispers had been circulating for decades about Harry's true parentage. Some tabloids hinted at James Hewitt. Others at unnamed military officers from Diana's inner circle. But what MI6 discovered was something entirely new. Harry, under the alias Henry W. Smith, visited a discreet private clinic in the Swiss Alps in November 2018. The purpose? To confirm whether King Charles was his biological father. The result? Sealed. But weeks later, Harry reportedly canceled 2 high-profile royal engagements, citing emotional exhaustion. And Meghan was seen leaving the same clinic days later, alone. According to a source connected to the clinic's legal team, the man who walked into that room left as someone else. It was like he'd lost his center. Harry's emotional retreat. From that point on, Harry's behavior changed. He became more distant from William, more critical of palace staff, more protective, ferociously so, of Meghan. And when Archie was born, friends say Harry became obsessed with shielding him from scrutiny. Not in a healthy, fatherly way. In a paranoid, trembling, nearly panicked way. One friend described it like this. It was like he was guarding a secret so big, if anyone saw it, the whole monarchy would explode. Which begs the question, what was Harry hiding? Was it just about Meghan's use of a surrogate? Or was it the creeping fear that Archie wasn't biologically his either? The Meghan ultimatum. Multiple sources confirmed to MI6 that Meghan issued a chilling ultimatum during her